Alright guys, welcome back to another Master and Apprentice video and podcast. Today we've got a fun little video that, we don't really talk a lot about comics, especially just any comic, but Marvel comics. We talk about, adaptations, video games, shows, movies, but not the comics itself. I'm a huge comic guy. I've been a comic guy since about 2008. I was about 5 years old then, so even maybe a little bit before, like 2007. Around Civil War was when I became a huge comic fan, because it was, again, that was like the first introduction. I saw a lot of advertisement. I was about 5 or 4 years of age, and there's been a lot of comics since then, obviously. So I've been a fan of comics for a long time. And Ath, on the other hand, he's been kind of familiar with comics, especially Marvel movies and, kind of the shows, well, a lot of pop culture stuff like that, but not the comics itself. And I recently gave him some introduction into comics, just like some suggestions, and I thought, that's cool. I'd really like to make a video kind of going over where I think a lot of great starting places are for comic fans. Now, this is this is all Marvel. This is not DC nor Image nor anything else, IDW, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, anything else. It's just Marvel. Now, maybe one day I can do some DC stuff. I'm very, very familiar with Marvel, especially everything post 2000. Not as much with every other, like DC. Like I'm familiar with it, but like I know Marvel like the back of my hand. Again, past 2000, past like Secret War, I'm fairly familiar with a lot of the stories in the comic industry for Marvel then. So that's what we're gonna start with today. Maybe again in the future we can go over some new stuff, but I wanted just to go over like introductions, what I think is a really, really good starting spot. Now, there's going to be a couple, like a multiple of, like Spider-Man or Avengers or whatever. There's probably going to be some missing that people are going to think, why is he missing that? There's no reason. There's just not something either I thought of or, I just maybe didn't want to suggest it. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's not a bad spot to start. So, with that being said, I thought to start off with everyone I've ever seen recommend a Spider-Man comic where to start is Ultimate Spider-Man 2000, came out in 2000, #1 by Brian Michael Bendis. Now, this was pretty revolutionary for its time. It was the first time we'd really seen something really big that wasn't part of the main continuity. We'd seen other things that weren't part of the main continuity, but this sold like bread and butter. Like, it was very popular for its time, and it's what a lot of, I want to say, when people imagine the story of Spider-Man and Peter Parker, a lot of people are actually imagining this, the Ultimate Spider-Man, not the from like the 60s. They're not really imagining that. A lot of people aren't even really familiar with that Spider-Man. They're familiar with this. And so it's a really, really good starting spot. Brian Michael Bendis is really, really good with these characters, especially early on. Now, this run goes on for many, many years, especially for Brian Michael Bendis. Eventually, he kills off Spider-Man, Peter Parker, and introduces Miles Morales. And this is actually where he gets his introduction into Marvel. This is where he's created. But I would start in the early 2000s, or 2000, issue #1. And just start with the run and see how far it takes you. But if you like Spider-Man at all, if you have any sort of interest in Spider-Man, or if you just really want to, you like the Spider-Man movies, you're like, I really want to read a fun Spider-Man comic, I would 100% recommend here. Now, there's some things that aren't going to be what you recognize. The Green Goblin in Ultimate Spider-Man is very different than what you would imagine from any other version of Green Goblin you've seen. Same thing with Venom. Venom's very different in this than what you're used to with Venom. So there's some things that are going to be different that you're like, that's not what I thought it was supposed to be. It's the Ultimate Universe. It's not the mainline universe, so a lot of things aren't what you expected. But to bring up Peter Parker and how he becomes Spider-Man and the battle of living a Peter Parker life and a Spider-Man life, the way it's depicted is top 2, top 3 Spider-Man perspectives to tell. And so I definitely recommend starting here. Just see how far it takes you, You might not like it, might not be for everybody, but it's like I said, most people recommend Ultimate Spider-Man #1. It's just a really good starting spot. Now, I thought I would go X-Men. Now, X-Men has such a long continuity of canon that it's such a hard spot to start at, and I figured there's 2 really good ones. Athen's going to introduce one, which is the one I introduced him to here in a minute. But the 2 ones that I wanted to introduce first is kind of a weird one, the 2007 X-Men Messiah Complex by Ed Brubaker. Now, this is post House of M, when Scarlet Witch it wishes half away of the mutant population. Not half, I think it's like 90 something percent, 97 or 98%, whatever it was. A huge part of the population is just gone. And the way the X-Men mutant community handled it was kind of, up in the air for a while, but it really starts with here, the Messiah Complex story and the saga that goes Messiah Complex, the Messiah War, and there's another one, there's a third one, I can't remember what it's called, but the point is, this is a really good starting on point where it's like, you might not be familiar with everything that's going on, but like all you need to know is House of M, and that almost all the mutant population is gone. There's only like 100 and something mutants left, and this is their battle for their survival, for the mutant lives, like all of them, not just the X-Men, but all of mutants. And so it's a really good starting spot. The reason it's kind of a weird one is because Messiah Complex is an event. It's a cross X-Men event, X-Men, X-Factor, New X-Men, and there's I think one more, Uncanny X-Men. And so you're going to have to collect a couple different titles, or what I would probably recommend is getting the paperback or the Ultimate Collection, whatever is easiest, and starting there, and it just puts all the titles together. And then from there, continuing on with whatever title seems most interesting, whether it's Uncanny X-Men or New X-Men or New Mutants, I think it was, or X-Factor, whatever it is. But I would definitely recommend starting here. It's a really good starting off spot for the X-Men. Ed Brubaker's brilliant. Again, it's kind of a weird recommendation, but I think it's a really good starting spot. It really props up what the X-Men become from 2007 and pretty much up into 2015 with, the big reset of Secret Wars. So like almost the next decade of X-Men storytelling kind of, I think, starts here. Really starts with House of M. I would probably recommend House of M first, but House of M is like its own crossover event. Messiah Complex is just exclusive to the X-Men. House of M goes from like Avengers, Spider-Man, everything. So you could probably start with House of M and then go into Messiah Complex, but I would start with Messiah Complex if you wanted to. Either way is fine. The other one I really want to recommend was 2004 Astonishing X-Men #1 by Joss Whedon. Now, this is, I wouldn't say generic, but it is kind of like very similar to the Ultimate Spider-Man. When you think of X-Men and a lot of the ways they're portrayed, I think, especially for like just modern era, Astonishing X-Men does a really good job of like being the modern day X-Men, what you'd expect from them. The art is really great. Joss Whedon does a pretty good job for his run in it. It goes on for like 94 issues. Joss Whedon doesn't go on that long. I think he goes for like 20 or 30 issues in it. But his whole run in it is amazing. I would definitely recommend it. If you just want like, I want X-Men. I don't want to have to deal with all the canon and lore and having to do my homework. What should I read first? What should I read? Just go right into Astonishing X-Men #1 and start there. And from there, you're kind of learning, okay, these are some side stories or side events that I'm very interested in. I'll go read those. Or some characters like Wolverine or whatever. I'll go read those. But I would definitely start with Astonishing X-Men #1 and seeing from there, like, I definitely like the X-Men. I definitely like the way they're being told here. This is going to be one of those modern day depictions that I think a lot of fans will enjoy. So there's that. The other one that I wanted to recommend, I'll let Athen take the floor.
It is 2001, The New X-Men by Grant Morrison, starting with issue 114. Now, the one thing I will say I like about this is this is my very first Marvel run that I've ever read in comics. So I will say it's coming from a newbie's perspective, but the only real implications I had on the mutants before this was pretty much the movies, right? The early 2000s X-Men movies, all that. Deadpool a bit too, which he's not even in these comics, but you got Wolverine, and really this is a great place to start with a good story where you don't really have to know a lot except for who the characters are. You got to know who they are. You got to understand that Professor X is Magneto's, they grew up together, so you got to have a little bit of a background, but at the same time, it's not like some small plot that doesn't really have any implications. Right after the first volume, it's like, wow, that was a really good X-Men story. The second volume, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened, and it's got some crazy things that, you're not getting out of a regular mutant, I'll just say movie, because I haven't read many of the comics, right? If you're gonna watch a Wolverine movie. It's going to be very linear. This is what's happening, right? There's some big implications, some crazy things that happen, but it happens gradually, so it all makes sense. It's not like you're suddenly you're all doing this and this is happening for the entire run, and then all of a sudden everything changes up, right? They lead you into where the plot goes next, and basically what I'm trying to say with this is it's a great run to start in, because all I knew was the movies, all you needed to know was the movies, and it is just a great story. It has a great twist to it. The new X-Men wasn't what I expected when I just read the title, right? Like there's a million different things that happen in this series, and it sets up a lot of things for the future. Like no spoilers really, but Quicksilver's in here. He doesn't even really play a role hardly at all, but you see him in here and you're like, oh wow, that's cool. He's gonna show up probably in the next run or two after that. Anyways, it's just a really good run that I'd recommend to watch if you're familiar with the movie versions of the X-Men and not really a lot else.
Yeah. The next two are Fantastic Four titles. Now, obviously, this is pretty new to the MCU, but we've had lots of movie adaptations. Fantastic Four is very different because I think most fans who've read Marvel Comics and Fantastic Four would agree Fantastic Four aren't your typical superhero team storytelling. It's more like adventure, discovery, science. Like, there's a lot more to it. It's very different. That being said, though, there's a lot of weird different perspectives that writers give. These are the two I think are the easiest to get into. Now, the first one I think is probably the better of the two. It's the much easier of the two to get into. I really love this one, and I'm talking about the 2002 Fantastic Four. Is starting out issue number 60 by Mark Waid. Mark Waid is a fantastic writer. Had a really great career with DC, and he's still with DC, but like he's had some great runs with like the Flash, and I believe he did some JLA. But his Fantastic Four run is phenomenal. I don't remember the exact issue when they stopped, but it goes for like 30 something issues, so it's a long run, but it's a really great run that it's just like it gives you the best dynamics of the whole family, minus one, and I'll explain it here in a second. But I think this is a really great introduction to the Fantastic Four. If you just want some fun Fantastic Four without, like, again, having to feel like you're missing a whole lot, if you just know who the Fantastic Four are and that, you know, they've had some kids, like that's the only two things you need to know, then that's it. You know, that's all you need, and I think you'll really enjoy this run. It's fantastic. And that being said, the one thing I said is missing is Franklin and Valeria Richards, the two kids of Reed and Sue. They had two kids, Franklin and Valeria Richards. Jonathan Hickman's 2009 issue number 570 run does a really good job of making Franklin and Valeria Richards really important to the family storytelling, and because he does a really good job of making sure the kids are a core component of the storytelling, not just kind of like plot devices, but like they continue the story. So much that he kind of had two titles running at the same time, Fantastic Four and FF, Future Foundation. Future Foundation FF was pretty much just the children's perspective. And so if you really like the kids' storytelling of the Fantastic Four, I would recommend Jonathan Hickman's run. His run is also part of like the whole setup for his MCU run up until Secret Wars. So if you want to read, you know, Avengers, New Avengers, Secret Wars, I would start with Fantastic Four. That's the other kind of part of this, is like it's really important, kind of setting up the multiverse, incursions, all that stuff. I would recommend his run, Jonathan Hickman, issue 570, really great run. So yeah, and then the last team one I wanted to recommend is, I think a lot of people saw this one coming as well, but that's going to be 2004 New Avengers issue number 1 by Brian Michael Bendis. Now, obviously, you can start a little bit before, but I think this is the best starting point. And all you need to know is Avengers disassembled. They disassembled, right? And that's kind of what House of M is the Avengers disassembled. Scarlet Witch went crazy, and not crazy, but she went insane and killed off some Avengers. They disbanded, and House of M happens, and so forth. But New Avengers is the answer to New Avengers, or Avengers Disassembled. And it's a really good starting spot. It does a really good job of making everyone just feel familiar, but also giving you new perspectives that really no one had seen at the time, with like Spider-Man and Wolverine joining the Avengers, right? Or Spider-Woman. Like, those are some really cool characters that like now kind of just seem part of the Avengers like forever, but it hadn't happened pretty much before then. So I would definitely recommend starting here. Again, this is part of that Brian Michael Bendis era, up of, like, from 2004 to like 2012 pretty much, where he pretty much ran DC, and like all the main events were kind of set up by his storytelling. Not everything obviously, but like the big ones, right? Like what's it called, Secret Invasion or Avengers versus X-Men. Like those are all kind of set up through his Avengers titles. And so I would definitely recommend starting with New Avengers #1. He has much more after. In 2010 it went from New Avengers to just Avengers. Well, he still had a New Avengers title. Kind of gets confusing, but I would just recommend starting with issue #1. I think it's 64 issues. Fantastic. It goes through a couple different events, so if you want to read the events while reading this, I would probably recommend it, because it makes it a little bit easier to follow those tie-in issues, like for Civil War, Secret Invasion, all of those. It makes those issues a little bit more understandable, but I don't think it's necessarily needed. I would just start with issue #1, and the first 2 arcs are fantastic. So I that's one of my favorite all-time runs. One of my favorite all-time stories is New Avengers by Brian Michael Bendis. Now we're gonna get into some of the kind of like solo characters, starting with I already said Spider-Man, Ultimate Spider-Man, but I wanted to go with 2008 Amazing Spider-Man issue 546 by Dan Slott. This is Brand New Day. This is after the One More Day event by J. Michael Straczynski, and this is kind of just a reboot of Spider-Man. There's a lot happening, and a lot of editorial didn't really like what was happening with Spider-Man, and so they just kind of wanted to reset him, bring him back to the status quo of being a loner, young adult who was, not really getting by great, but he's getting by, and also being a superhero part-time or full-time on the side. And this does a really good job of kind of showing you that. I don't think there's really much you need to know. I mean, there's some things that are kind of hinted at, obviously, after One More Day. If you want to read that event, you can. J. Michael Straczynski's run of Spider-Man is my favorite Spider-Man run, but there's a lot of crazy ideas and new stories being proposed there that might be harder for some new readers. If you want to go back and read it, I would recommend it, but I think the easier spot to start is it with Dan Slott's Brand New Day. Obviously, the Brand New Day Spider-Man's coming to theaters. It's kind of like that, where everyone just forgets who Spider-Man is. Everyone forgets who Peter Parker and Spider-Man are the same, and so he just kind of gets a new slate at being Spider-Man, a new slate at being Peter Parker. This is very similar to that, and so I would recommend it. If you like Spider-Man and just want the main continuity of Spider-Man, this is kind of a reset on all that and back to the status quo of Spider-Man. So if you want that, I'd recommend that. Then we go to Captain America in 2004, issue #1 by Ed Brubaker. A long run by Ed Brubaker. This is, I want to say, the most iconic run for Captain America, but one of the most iconic. And this is where like things like Winter Soldier are introduced. This is things where Captain America dies and Bucky Barnes takes the mantle of Captain America. Some like really important parts of Captain America's continuity are in this run. Ed Brubaker does a really good job of making Captain America not just this, Boy Scout, but like really interesting, making mysterious espionage, almost like spy storytelling, with the Winter Soldier and Black Widow and Nick Fury, all of that. Really fun, really cool. This is my favorite Captain America run. There's some great ones after this, there's some great ones before this, but I think this is a really good job of just giving you a perspective of Captain America that I think a lot of people really enjoy. Most people say Captain America Winter Soldier is their favorite. That kind of encapsulates this whole run, is this Ed Brubaker run starting 2004, issue #1. Then we go to Invincible Iron Man 2008, issue #1 by Matt Fraction. This is probably the best Invincible Iron Man, or best Iron Man run, in my opinion. I really enjoy this one. This, again, is the same thing, modern day Iron Man. I think the one thing that really holds this back is it does have a lot to do with the surrounding crossover events. When I'm talking like Secret Invasion, and especially like Dark Avengers and all that, with Norman Osborn taking over pretty much S.H.I.E.L.D., creating Hammer. He hunts down Tony, and that kind of takes, like, the first couple arcs are based off of that, so you might be a little confused if you're not familiar with the surrounding crossover events at the time. but I don't think it necessarily takes it down too far. The storytelling by Matt Fraction is very, very good at the time still. To this day, it holds up very well. And again, if you're just a little bit familiar with like who Norman Osborn is and like what's happening, you'll be fine. I would recommend it. It's a great run by it goes on pretty long, like 60 something issues, so it's a really great run for Iron Man. Probably, I think, one of the longest runs for Iron Man there is out there in general. So I would recommend that if you're an Iron Man fan. The next one is 2007 Thor #1 by J. Michael Straczynski. This is after, I think it was 2004 maybe, Thor Ragnarok. Thor pretty much, Ragnarok happens, all the Asgardians are dead, Thor dies, everyone dies. And it had been like 3 to 4 years before we'd seen Thor, any Asgardian. And then all of a sudden, 2007 happens, Thor #1 by J. Michael Straczynski, and it's a new age for Thor and the Asgardians. And I think the fun twist on this is they live on Earth now. Asgard is on Earth, and Thor brings all the Asgardians and he reincarnates all of them, and it's really, really, really fun, really, really cool. Yeah, I think this is like, if you just want like a modern day Thor that is not too hard to understand. Like, I think a lot of people see Thor like think, oh, it's gonna be really hard to get into because all the Norse mythology and like just the way they write, like it might be a little bit hard to understand. This is not. This is super easy to understand, super easy to follow. You don't even have to know anything. It's literally, the story is creating itself as it happens, as unfolding before you. He's literally reincarnating himself and all the Asgardians and Asgard and like everything. You don't really need to know anything that's going on before or at the same time. It just happens. The only thing is, you might want to read Siege, and if you get, like 12 to 15 issues in, you'll understand why. But that's beyond it. And then the last one I wanted to recommend was Wolverine 2003 #1 by Greg Rucka. I've only read like the first 6 issues, like the first volume. I haven't read his whole run. This is just one of, I think, the best depictions of Wolverine. Obviously, Wolverine can be depicted in so many different ways. He's one of the most popular Marvel characters, probably like top 2 or 3. I just think this run is really, really great. Greg Rucka doesn't stay on the run the whole time, but like the whole run itself is really, really fantastic, and it goes through all these events with like Civil War and all that stuff. But the run itself does a really good job. It's one of my favorite depictions of Wolverine that's kind of in the modern day, because those classic X-Men depictions like by Chris Claremont are great, but like they're more attuned to the 90s and 80s. This does a little bit better job of bringing Wolverine to the modern day and not being so, I don't know what the word is. There was definitely a specific taste in the 90s, right? Characters like Lobo and Wolverine and Deadpool and Cable were like some of the most popular, edgy, almost anti-hero characters at the time, and like that was kind of like everywhere and rampant. 2003, Greg Rucka does a pretty good job of giving a depiction of Wolverine that brings him to a modern era, and I really, really enjoy it. And the whole run itself is fantastic. Now, like I said, there's probably multiple other suggestions I'm missing, but I think you'll see the core thing is this is pretty much everything post 2000, and that's because that's what I grew up reading. And so almost all of our subscriber account is similar to my age and maybe a little bit older, and so for that I apologize if I'm not giving older suggestions. I promise I do read a lot of that stuff too. I've gone back and reading a lot of it actually, but it's just not stuff that I think is really easy to get into read, because that's not what I found easy to get into read. But maybe it is for some older folks. I don't know. But that being said, let me know if there's anything I'm missing in the comments that are really great recommendations. Let me know if there's something that you guys want to suggest to me or Afton. Afton, was there anything that you wanted a suggestion on that maybe I could help?
I just finished the X-Men. The new X-Men line, the run by Grant Morrison. I was thinking maybe I'll start another mutant. I mean, there's a mutant run. The House of M just seems great. I know it's not in this this list here, so I was kind of wondering, maybe what do you think I should go for next if I wanted to pick another mutant one after that?
Yeah, no, I'd say I try to stay away from the crossover events, because those are so easy to kind of get stuck in trap, and like you're trying to figure out what tie-ins I need to read, what do I need to read before and after. But yeah, I would say if you're reading the mutant stuff, probably after New X-Men, the best thing to jump into is House of M, and then like I said, after that, going to Messiah Complex. It's kind of what the new age of X-Men looked like up until 2015 Secret Wars. So yeah, I'd probably recommend that. Again, it's a crossover event, but if you just read the event, like just grab the paperback, don't worry about any of the tie-ins, because really none of the tie-ins really matter that much in my opinion, at least for that event. That'd be a really good recommendation. So like I said, let me know what you guys think down in the comments if there's anything I missed that you guys wanted, and yeah, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Peace.